All right, interior designers, I need you to stop rejecting the powder bath. You heard me right. Stop acting like the small projects are beneath you or listening to the other coaches in the space that are saying not to take those. I want you to stop looking at the client who wants help with one room and immediately deciding they are not serious, they are not a good fit, and they are not your right client because they don't have enough money or because they're wasting your time. That may be true, but it may be a lie because that powder bath may not actually be a powder bath. It may be an audition. It may be the client's way of asking, can you listen to me? Can you lead me? Can I trust you with my money? Can you make good decisions without creating chaos? And can you handle my contractor? Can you communicate when something goes wrong? And most importantly, do I want you in my life for the next 5, 10, or 15 years? So you may think you are being asked to design a powder bath, and the client may be deciding whether you will eventually design their primary residence, their vacation home, their daughter's first house, their office, and yes, maybe even the house in London. Today, we're talking about one of the biggest mistakes I'm seeing designers make. They're hiring the job instead of hiring the client. They evaluate the immediate project fee while completely ignoring the potential lifetime value of the relationship. And then they wonder why they constantly have to chase new leads, spend money on marketing, and start completely over with strangers. Let's fix that. Welcome back to Success by Design, the podcast where we talk honestly about what it takes to create a profitable, sustainable, and scalable interior design business. I'm Katie Decker Erickson, and not only am I an active practitioner and interior designer myself, but I coach other interior designers who want to succeed and make their businesses all that they set out to make them when they started. See, I'm still dealing with clients, contractor budgets, and procurement, and I'm not coaching from the theory book. I'm coaching from inside of the arena of all the chaos that's happening in our marketplace right now. One of the greatest advantages you can build in your design business is the ability to recognize the difference between a small project and a small client opportunity. They are not the same thing. And here is how this actually happens. Let's say a prospective client reaches out to you. We would love some help updating our powder bath. Are you available? And the designer immediately starts calculating in the back of your head. The room is tiny. The furniture opportunity is basically non-existent. There may be one vanity, one light fixture, a mirror, maybe some wallpaper, plumbing, paint, accessories. And you start thinking to yourself, well, that's not really enough work, and I cannot make enough money out of that. I only want full service design projects. I don't want to waste my time, and I need larger jobs. And I've heard all of these things said by designers in my coaching practice. And so you turn away and you give the inquiry kind of a lukewarm response, or you send over an inflated minimum, and then you're hoping that the client disappears. And 6 months later, that same client hires another designer to renovate their entire kitchen. And then a year after that, the designer helps them furnish the main floor. Then comes the primary suite and then that vacation property. And then that client refers the designer to 3 other friends from the country club. And the original designer, she's not seeing a dime of any of that work. Let's unpack the why. See, the mistake this designer made was evaluating the room instead of evaluating the client. She looked at the initial transaction and missed the potential relationship that existed there. Let's take another scenario to unpack this. Let's say a client asks you to help select paint colors for a few rooms. And you think, I'm not interested in a paint color consultation. I want a whole house project. I'm really busy right now. I don't have capacity, or those aren't the projects I enjoy. But look at it from the client perspective. In my firm, we call this looking at it through the client lens. When you look at things through the client lens, it can dramatically change. See, this client, she doesn't know you yet. They may have found you through Instagram or Google or a referral or maybe a designer event, and they like your work, but that's not the same as being willing to do a 6-figure investment into who you are. See, they're watching to see whether you arrive prepared. This is why they ask for the paint consultation. They want to know whether you understand their taste, and they want to experience your process. They're also going to evaluate whether you respect their budget and whether you communicate clearly and whether you make them feel more confident, or if you just add to the confusion they already feel, which is why they want to hire you in the first place. See, what they're doing at the end of the day is they are taking you for a test drive. And honestly, they should. We need to stop being offended when sophisticated clients do not just hand us keys to their entire house during the first conversation. You wouldn't hire a new employee into your firm and immediately give them access to every account, every client, every major decision in your business. Not at all. See, trust happens through evidence. And the same is exactly true of your clients. They want evidence. See, I see designers who often believe they need to reject the small projects because they go, well, the small projects aren't really profitable, Katie. I don't want to spend time on it. That is the misdiagnosis right there. See, the problem is not necessarily the size of the project. The problem is usually that the designer has not created a profitable way to deliver it. You may not have a minimum designer fee or a defined consultation or strategy package, maybe a clear procurement structure or a project management fee or a minimum purchasing requirement. So you look at that powder bath and you go, yeah, there's really no money in this. But let's be careful, because I think what you really mean is, I've not designed a business model that makes this profitable. And those are two completely different statements. See, you shouldn't automatically reject the project. The answer may be to improve the offer. You also may need to recognize when you're making decisions based only on the fastest possible profit. You want the large project today. You want the full house today. You want the procurement revenue today. And don't get me wrong, as a fellow designer, I get all of that. Cash flow matters, profit matters, and you cannot build a healthy company on the promise that every powder bath will eventually become a mansion and that house that I talked about in London, right? But you also cannot build a stable company if every project requires you to attract, sell, and onboard a brand new client. See, that doesn't scale and is utterly exhausting if you put yourself in that position. Harvard Business School describes customer lifetime value as a way to understand the overall value of a customer relationship. This includes the acquisition of bringing them on board, maximizing that relationship well beyond that powder bath, and then retaining that customer all the way through their kids needing a designer and that home in London. That means the value of a client cannot always be measured by that first invoice alone. You need both. You need immediate project profitability, even if it's not a lot, and you need long-term relationship potential. So how do you start hiring the client instead of hiring only the job? You have to evaluate the project and the person. How do you do it? You're going to ask yourself some tough questions. If you have a notebook, now's the time to whip it out. If not, come back to this if you're driving. Does the client respect professional expertise? Do they communicate clearly? Do they appear financially capable of completing the current project? Do they actually make the decisions, and are they willing to follow your process? Do their expectations align with reality? Do they own other properties? And are they planning future renovations? Are they connected to the type of people you would like to serve? And could this relationship naturally and organically expand? So you're not trying to manipulate a small client into spending more money. That's not what we're about. You're determining whether that initial engagement can become the beginning of an authentic, beneficial, professional relationship. There's also an important distinction here, and I'm not telling you to accept every small job, far from it. A tiny project with a disrespectful client, an unrealistic budget, constant negotiation, and no willingness to follow your process is what I lovingly call a dumpster fire project. And a powder bath attached to a great project, by the same token, can be an excellent opportunity. See, a full house attached to a terrible client can be a disaster. And isn't that what you originally wanted the entire time? But the size of the contract does not tell you the quality of the relationship. This is where discernment matters so much. So the next step is to create a profitable entry point. Perhaps you offer a clearly defined small project package. Maybe it has a fixed scope, a minimum designer fee, a limited number of concepts or revisions, a clear timeline. It's a paid process for anything outside of the original agreement, because that's likely to happen, right? And the client still receives a premium experience. They get you. You still provide excellent design, but you're not providing unlimited access, endless revisions, and expanding services for a small flat fee. So hear me out here. Small does not mean casual. Small does not mean undefined, and small does not mean cheap. It just means contained. And this is where your contract becomes incredibly important. I want to challenge the way designers talk about scope creep in our industry. We act as though additional work is automatically a problem. Oh my gosh, scope creep. She wants me to do the hallway. Oh my gosh, the hallway led into the laundry room. And they want help with everything that's in here. Then the wallpaper selection affects the lighting. And then all of a sudden we have new artwork, right? And I hear the designers in my coaching practice saying, they just keep adding things. And yes, that was not included. And the project is getting out of control. But take a deep breath and pause for a moment. I want to ask you something. Why are you upset that a satisfied client wants to buy more of your expertise? See, that is not automatically a problem. Now, unpaid additional work is a problem. Untracked additional time is a problem. Unapproved additional work is a problem. And unprofitable additional work is a problem. But additional paid scope from a good client, folks, that's called business growth. Your contract should not create an environment where expanded scope becomes confusing, adversarial, or free. It should create a clear pathway for the client to add services. This is why the contract I offer over at my website at successbydesign.coach includes the allowance and accounts for the occurrence of scope creep. Every email that adds onto the project becomes legally binding under my contract. If you want that, feel free to check it out and go get it because it's encouraging exactly what we talk about. Even small projects should have written agreements. And AIA guidance for small projects emphasizes that an agreement should clarify responsibilities and define the project scope to prevent avoidable misunderstandings. See, your agreement should explain in language reviewed by your attorney that requests outside of the stated scope will be treated as additional services. How does it identify them? How are they approved? Do you bill hourly or fixed cost? This should all be delineated in that contract. Whether that schedule adjustments may be required or additional procurement and project management fees may apply. And see, the goal here, folks, is not to intentionally keep the original scope vague. That is not smart and it is not ethical for your client. The goal is to make expansion three things. It needs to be easy, it needs to be transparent, and it needs to be profitable. You should be able to say, absolutely, we would love to help you with the dining room. Since that room is outside the current powder bath scope, we will send over an additional services proposal outlining the design fee deliverables and timing. See, that isn't confrontational. That is professional. You are not scolding the client for wanting more. Rather, you are showing them how to purchase more. And there is a major difference between those two. So every firm should have a standard process for this. First, identify the request. Do not quietly do it because, it will only take a few minutes. That just makes you resentful when it actually takes more than a few minutes because we know very few things in interior design take a few minutes, right? Those few minutes accumulate across your entire organization. Second of all, I want you to name it clearly. Say, that is a great addition and it falls outside our current agreement. Now add a price to it. Do not emotionally guess, folks, on whether you like the client. Use your established fee structure and then document it. Feel free to just send it an email if you have the contract that covers your emails. And then collect the payment according to your policy. See, this is how scope creep becomes revenue instead of resentment. And when you do this well, the client does not feel nickel and dimed. They feel led. They understand exactly what they are purchasing, what happens next, what additional steps you're integrating into their process. Now, let's turn to that powder bath because you've agreed to take the project because you see potential in the client and because your small project fee is profitable. So what happens next? You're going to treat that powder bath like it matters because it does. You do not give the client a watered down version of your service. Instead, you're going to give them a focused version. You show up on time. You explain the process. You respond when you say you're going to, and you give them confidence in the decisions and manage the expectations. You're not going to blame vendors in front of them. You're going to solve problems calmly and track details and communicate changes. And most importantly, you are going to finish well. As we often say, you're going to put that Lexus bow on their experience because the test drive that your client is doing is not only about whether you can make a beautiful room. They already believe you have taste. They are testing your ability to lead. See, beautiful design may get you that first conversation. Leadership is going to get you the next house. Clients remember how you made that process feel for them. Did you make it easier? Did you protect their most important investment? Did you anticipate problems and clearly explain trade-offs to them? Did you prevent them from making expensive mistakes? And did you follow through after the exciting design presentation was over? See all of those steps right there? That creates the next project. So think beyond the first invoice, because the client may initially pay you to design one room, but over the life of the relationship, that client could hire you for several properties. They could refer friends and family. They could introduce you to a commercial opportunity, which, by the way, if you need a contract for that, we have that on the website as well. Or they could bring you in for a larger renovation. Bain's widely retention research has suggested the relatively small improvements in customer retention can produce substantial increases in profit. Although the exact impact is going to vary by business, the larger principle is what matters here. Keeping strong clients, folks, can be extremely economically powerful. Don't fall for the gimmicky advice of just raise your price on one single service. What does that even mean? See, what we're going for here, and this is what gets you to a seven-figure business, is we're going for relationship. A retained client does not need to relearn your process. You don't have to rebuild trust from ground zero with them. See, you already understand their taste, their communication style, priorities, and decision-making value and patterns. And most importantly, they know you and the value you're bringing to their home. See, they're going to be a lot less likely to compare you to 5 other designers every time they want to start something. And don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean you stop providing excellent service. It means the relationship becomes efficient and valuable for both of you. Isn't that the whole dream of business, is that you're creating win-wins for everybody? This is how you stop living on the new lead treadmill of who came in. And instead of constantly asking, whoa, where will my next client come from? You're starting to ask yourself, how well am I serving and retaining the excellent clients I already have on my roster? And this requires a mindset shift. See, that old belief is saying, oh, the project is too small to matter. I hope after this episode, you find yourself saying, the project must be profitable on its own, but the relationship may be larger than the initial scope. Or that old belief of, I only take full service design projects, like it's a badge of honor. Instead, your new belief is, I create intentional entry points for the right clients. Or that old belief, scope creep is ruining my projects. No. The new belief is, unmanaged scope growth ruins projects. Properly documented scope growth increases revenues. I'm going to throw a few more at you. The old belief is, if they valued me, they would hire me for the whole house immediately. No, the new belief is trust is earned in stages, and I know how to lead a client from one successful stage to the next. Perhaps your old belief is, I need the biggest possible invoice. No, the new belief is, I need profitable projects and valuable long-term relationships with the right clients. See, we have to stop measuring every opportunity by what it produces this month. A mature business evaluates immediate margin, operational fit, relationship quality, the future potential, and referred value. And that, folks, is not desperation. That is called strategy. Here is what I want you to do this week, speaking of strategy. First, review the last 5 inquiries you rejected because they were too small. Were they truly poor fit clients, or did you simply lack a profitable offer for them? Then I want you to create one clearly defined entry service. Maybe it's a room strategy package, a design intensive, a furnishing plan, a color consultation, or a small room full service package. And I want you to price it to be profitable. By the same token, you're going to limit the scope. You're going to make the process feel premium and amazing. Then third, I want you to review your contract with a qualified attorney, or grab the one on our website from a fabulous intellectual property attorney. Make sure the scope is clear and that you have simple, legally appropriate mechanisms in place for additional services, approvals, fees, and schedule changes. And then I want you to create an additional services template. Your team should not have to invent the process every time a client says, while you're here, would you also look at this room? And finally, start tracking lifetime client value. Look at your best 5 clients that you just think, gosh, I love working with them. How many projects have they completed with you? How much revenue and profit have they generated in their entire relationship with you? And how many referrals have they sent? How did that relationship with them begin? And you may discover that some of your most valuable clients did not begin with your largest projects. In fact, I bet you will. So, in closing today, folks, the powder bath is not always just a powder bath. Sometimes it is just where trust begins. And sometimes it is the first chapter in a relationship that eventually includes the kitchen, the primary suite, the vacation property, the office, the child's first home, or that home in London. But I want you to hear me loud and clear. Relationship does not grow simply because you hope that it will. You need a profitable entry offer. You need a really strong process and excellent communication with a healthy dose of leading with confidence to go with it. You need a contract that clearly defines the original scope while making paid expansion easy and professional for your clients. And you need to stop resenting those clients for asking you to do more. They're trying to give you more money. Your job is to make sure that trust translates into well-defined, well-compensated work. Now, don't blindly chase every small project. And by the same token, don't blindly chase every large project either. I want you to hear one thing from me today and one thing only. Hire the client, build the relationship, and deliver the first project exceptionally well. You're going to create a structure that allows work to grow because the goal is not to become the designer they hired once. It is to become their designer. You want them to say, my designer. You're the one they call before they even buy the property. They're going to start bringing you into the conversations early, and they trust you with their budget. They are the ones who recommend without hesitation. You know their family, their preferences, their properties, their vision, and that is how you build a design firm with depth. And it's how you create recurring revenue without selling a subscription. See, this is how you replace constant client acquisition with long-term and meaningful relationships, and how that powder bath becomes so much more than a powder bath. That is exactly the kind of work I do with my coaching clients inside of Success by Design. We examine the opportunities that you are currently rejecting. We restructure your offers, we strengthen your client journey, and we improve pricing and create systems that turn those additional requests into money-making opportunities. Because you do not necessarily need more leads, folks. You may need a better way to recognize, serve, and grow the clients you've already got on your roster. If you're ready to stop chasing isolated projects and start building a business around profitable, long-term client relationships, head over to fixmydesignbiz.com. Again, that's fixmydesignbiz.com and schedule a free problem-solving call with me. Let's see if we can make this work together and get your business where you want it to be. Because remember, at the end of the day, your business should be working for you, not you working for it. Until next time, take care.